We are here to talk about college admissions in the time of COVID-19. You know, it is a very challenging time for all parents, and I want you to know that this time is for you. We're going to be focusing on your questions, your concerns, really digging deeply into what is happening currently in the college admissions sort of strategy that you need to be thinking about. And additionally, we're going to be looking at how important it will be for you to think about a holistic approach depending on the grade level of your student. There's certainly going to be a lot here to dig into. I want to let you know, if you haven't already done so, if you could please mute and turn off cameras as you're coming in. I'm going to go ahead and begin presenting in a moment. And what I'm going to do, and thanks so much for understanding, I'm going to be inviting you one at a time to please absolutely come on camera with me, ask those questions. We'll unmute you one at a time. And I'm going to be here for the duration until you are out of questions. This is my commitment to you. So thanks. We've got a nice turnout this afternoon here on July 22nd of 2020, day 1 million of our quarantine. Am I right? All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. I did share a little pre-presentation for those of you who were here early, and we're just going to go ahead and get started with a brief PowerPoint that I've put together that I think is going to really help to demonstrate some data, some information. If you don't already have it, grab a pencil or a pen and paper, or if you want to take notes onto an iPad or a laptop. You are sure to get some information here that you're going to want to be able to capture. You do have my blessing to screenshot any of the slides if that is helpful for you. If you would like to share those with members of your PTA at your school, if you want to share them with some friends who also have teenage students, I would just ask that you let them know that it came from me. And if they'd like to be connected to me, I'm always happy to meet your families. So these were some of your concerns. As I was saying a moment ago, really this time is here for you. I'm going to be addressing these questions, your questions, and anything that I don't cover in the slides I'm about to share. I want you to please reach back at the end and with a hand raise or with a chat, or just pop on camera and like, hey, Pamela, I really want to answer to this question because this is my burning question. So I'm here to answer all of these questions, and I'm sure there will be more. Again, I encourage you to share the recording of this with your friends who also have teenage students. Tiny bit about me, because some of you don't know me at all. So I think it's nice to know who is presenting, who you're learning from today. You know, really the big headline is I'm a first-gen student. I did not have the advantages that your sons and daughters have. I didn't have anyone that knew how to help me. So that really became an important calling for me. In my undergraduate, as you can see there, my dad was very proud that day when I graduated Columbia. I'm also a mom of 3, so I know firsthand the stakes, right, you guys? The stakes of our kids and how we invest our hearts. That's my daughters, Hannah and Lily and Annabelle. You know, my whole heart, my whole world. And so I understand that we're coming in here to talk about this, but we're connecting it to the stakes and the emotion and the importance of this for you. Born in Milwaukee, grew up in Virginia, 15 years in New York City. I've been in LA since 2007. 23 years I've been a college admissions specialist, and I'm currently working on my PhD in global leadership and change at Pepperdine University. I'm working on a dissertation called College Access in the Digital Age, and you're going to find out in this webinar that technology is going to be critical for you to help position your son or daughter. The old days are gone. Your kid is not going to be standing in a hallway in a physical building waiting to talk to their counselor at their school. They might be waiting to sit on Zoom, or they might be out on the internet looking for free content, and who knows what caliber that content is. So technology, the intersection of technology and the college admissions space is really where I'm focusing my doctoral work. So just a little bit about that. The ways that I'm able to help, I do have 3 companies. I just thought I'd throw this out there, and then I'm about to hit you with so much data. Again, grab a pen or pencil. If you don't already have one, you want a legal pad like this. You want you want one of these in front of you right now, because it's a lot of information I'm about to hit you with. Last slide about me. So I do have a tutoring agency, Valley Prep Tutoring. We've been in business since 2012. Top Ivy League level state certified educators working one-on-one with your student, test prep, GPA support, all subject areas through AP, etc. My consulting, I do offer one-on-one consulting. I see we've got a couple of my current consulting clients on the call. Hi guys, thanks for being here. They're like, oh, there's Pamela again. And the other ones are like, who's this lady? In any event, the final piece that we're gonna talk about today, so important for you guys to understand how to open the gate for your son or daughter. And gate through technology is where I've taken my life's work and poured it in so that you can save a lot of time and money and figure a lot of things out. So let's start, guys. Are you ready? You got your pens and pencils ready? This is the Great Reset. Okay, here's what's happening with colleges. First of all, colleges care about two things. You see this teeter-totter on the left? Yield and attrition. I want you to jot those words down. I want you to always think, you know, when you play chess, I'm not saying that you're in opposition to the colleges, but run with my metaphor. You want to not just think ahead several moves in your own plan. You want to know what moves the opposition is likely to make, right? So what is the college worried about? Thinking from their side of the desk will help you better position your student. So I'm going to tell you on this webinar what they're concerned about right now. And I know this because I'm actively involved in a whole lot of professional networking groups. And I can tell you that there's some very candid information, data, opinions, and frankly, panic happening in a lot of institutions. Some really good people, friends of mine I've known for many years in some of the best colleges across the country are staring at their business model and saying, oh my goodness, how are we going to make this work? So yield is defined as what percentage of students say yes based on the number that apply. So it's literally a fraction, right? When you think about attrition, this means the percentage of students who stay for a full 4-year degree. They don't transfer out, they don't drop out, attrition. So you can imagine this little teeter-totter. What do the colleges want? They want high yield and low attrition, right? Makes sense if you were the college. And let's remember, colleges are businesses. We're not saying that's bad. We're just saying that's a reality. And we're bringing not just our students into these environments, but probably 6 figures worth of hard-earned money, am I right? I mean, that's a lot of money. And I know, because I've done that with my daughters. It's like, okay, it's expensive. So we've got to really think about this. How do we make sure that the application that we're putting in gives them a sense of confidence that we are not going to be an attrition risk? That's why when we talk about test prep, GPA, course rigor, some of the things I'll talk about in the webinar, it is extremely compelling for them, for you to be able to show certain types of characteristics in the application. You can see there a quote from, the Cal State Chancellor. Guys, I didn't like this quote, but it's not atypical from what I'm seeing. Everybody's focused, here we are in July, everybody's like, gosh, will we go back to school in the fall? You know what the colleges are asking themselves? Can I have in-campus classes in 2021 fall? Can I have it in 2022? There is having to plan, having to mitigate, because if they assume that everything's going to be fine, by November or whatever, wouldn't that be nice? Then they are really putting their business at risk. So we want you to know that there will be colleges that will adjust and survive. This is Darwinian. This is the evolution of the college admission space. And some would say, and I would agree, that we were overdue for a reboot. Some colleges will figure out maybe a hybrid model. We're hearing that a lot, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And there will be some that can't adjust. Some have unsustainable financial models and will close. Here's what I want you to know. Be very careful about applying to schools that could be risky in terms of viability. You know, we want to make sure that our student can be in a viable, sustainable institution. So as of last week, take a look, this is what's going on. This is according to the Chronicle of Higher Ed, which is a very, you know, one of our big trade papers, over 1,000 colleges and universities. You can see there, last week, 56% were saying in person. Now, I dare say I would be shocked if 56% of the parents that I know are ready to place their child in that classroom, like shoulder to shoulder with other people. I don't think so. And I think it's even less likely they want them living in dorms, and even less likely than that, then they want them in dorms with shared bathrooms. You see how there's layers and levels and layers and levels of this thing. Again, thank you and welcome everyone. If you wouldn't mind muting and cameras off just for this part of the presentation, and then I'm gonna invite you guys all back on so we can see everybody's beautiful faces. All right, so very interesting to see these numbers. Online, only 9%. Well, there is a reason for that. There are lawsuits going on right now in schools from Florida to Washington State. And the lawsuits are, hey, you're expecting me to pay the same tuition, but I'm not gonna get the same experience. I'm gonna be sitting at my house in my pajamas on Zoom, and I'm not gonna be on the big, beautiful campus with the, you know, the full college experience. We all know that our teenagers are so excited to finally individuate, you know, they want to go somewhere, and sometimes we want them to, and we can't make that happen. And so the value, what is the value proposition, is something that's really under question and is leading to interesting legal challenges. Well, those are expensive. That is gonna impact the budgets of the schools too. Again, thinking about the chess game. What does hybrid mean? I'm going to show you some concrete examples of what some colleges are doing as a hybrid model. I think you'll find it very interesting. Yale, Princeton, Cornell, MIT, and Brown. Feel free to screenshot. I am not going to read all this. I don't like slides that look like this, by the way. But I just wanted you to see quotes from what they're doing. And the bottom line here is this. A lot of them are hybrid doesn't just mean some online, some virtual. It sometimes means, okay, we're gonna have the seniors because they have to finish their research, or we're only gonna have the freshmen in the spring and then this other, you know, cohort in you know, the other semester, like alternating semesters, trying to find out ways to allow for social distancing. Well, I'm no doctor. I don't pretend to, you know, I watch Dr. Fauci and everybody with the rest of you. I only know that at the end of the day, you know who's going to decide whether this makes sense? It's not Yale and Princeton. You know who it is? Mamas and papas who decide, you know, like, do we feel confident with our students in that situation? And maybe we do. Maybe things are going to get better. Who knows? Vaccine, what do I know? I'm not here to talk about medicine. I have one thing that I do, and I do it well, and it's this. So let's just talk about college admissions. You can draw your own conclusions on anything to do with the virus. But here is what's happening in policies. Things are evolving. Here is what's going on. So first of all, if your student is very interested in specific colleges and universities, I haven't seen one yet that doesn't have an FAQ page on the COVID impact of their policies. So do obviously access their websites. There are a lot of fundraising efforts happening because some schools really do reach out intentionally to students who are from lower socioeconomic strata. You know, God bless them for it. Well, somebody has to help them have Wi-Fi and laptops if they were dependent on the schools, because now they don't have that. So fundraising and advancement offices, scholarship committees, and so forth, all, you know, having to kind of pivot and do things differently. They're having to figure out what happens in gap years. I saw one of our parents participating today was asking, you know, well, you know, my son is thinking of doing a gap year. That is not an uncommon thing that some families are thinking about, especially for this year. Does not mean I recommend or don't recommend it. I think it really is very personal and dependent on a lot of factors that we wouldn't have time to go into in this webinar. But it's a very important thing to be aware of. Does it mean that if you get accepted and then you ask to defer and you say, oh, I'm going to take a gap year, does it mean they have to let you back in a year? No, it doesn't. So there are medical deferrals. There are different reasons for deferrals, different policies for the different reasons. Well, I got in this year and I got a dean's scholarship. Can my scholarship roll forward? Oh, that's another committee. That's somebody else, right? So there are many levels and layers here for you to be thinking about. If you're the parent of a rising senior, you know, you are in a 911. If your student hasn't already built their list and finished at least 50% of their essays, you are in what I call a 911 emergency. And you're gonna wanna get moving very, very quickly. If you're the parent of a rising junior, that's a class that's an interesting one because we don't know what's gonna happen next year, but I do want you to be aware of some of the eventualities that can happen. For example, look at this about transfers. Well, there is a real dollar drain that can happen. Because, for example, I heard of a student from Texas who had gotten into UCLA, finished his first year at UCLA, and, you know, was kind of underway with, you know, his, like, middle of a semester, I think in his sophomore year, had to go back to Texas. Well, if he transfers out from UCLA, is it automatic that wherever he goes, because now mom and dad want him closer to home, is he going to automatically be able to transfer all those credits? Well, it depends on the program. Will those credits transfer? So the way the dollar drain happens is it's important to caution you that when you move from institution to institution, that sometimes can get pretty disincentivized for monetary reasons and also for academic reasons. You know, I mean, the universities want to make sure that your student is coming into their institution at a certain level. And if you did, you know, let's say English 101, 102 sequence somewhere else, and they said, well, we think ours is more robust than that, you're going to have to retake it here. Well, that's a couple $1,000s out of mom and dad's pocket, isn't it? So something to be aware of. That's probably why we're seeing a tremendous move to in-state applications or in region. Here, I'm based in Los Angeles. Here in Los Angeles, most of my students right now, if they're looking anywhere outside of Southern California, it might even be Arizona, they're less likely to apply even up toward San Fran, Oregon, Washington. They want to be a half-day drive. They're drawing 4 to 6 hour circles, which of course toward the ocean doesn't get you very far, but inland and north and south. So, you know, they're looking at San Diego. And it doesn't mean that you can't have your student apply from the West Coast to Ivy League schools, which are on the East. It just means you need to be aware of these types of possibilities and be ready to, you know, adjust if that's what you need to do. So, you know, we want to be able to think about how best you as a parent can strategize to position your students. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips today, and I hope this is helpful. And again, if you have questions, you may want to jot them down and you'll have an opportunity to ask those shortly. First tip, and you probably have heard this before, but this is more important right now than ever, which is why I'm going to say it. Please, to the degree that your student is able to handle it, make sure, very sure, that they are pursuing rigorous coursework. This means honors. It can be an IB program, International Baccalaureate. It can be AP, which is Advanced Placement. Some students are doing dual transcript submission, and I think that that is such an elegant option. So dual transcript submission can be, and in fact, there are some students who do a triple transcript submission. So hear me out so you make sure you understand this. Your school does not have to offer AP in 9th or 10th grade. Okay, this is where a lot of parents come in and they go, oh, well, we didn't start till 11th because that's what our school allows. Well, you know, are you responsible to the school and its policy, or are you responsible to your student being appropriately positioned? There are online, and certainly I can introduce you if you want to ask me about it, online AP courses, online honors courses that will be submitted as WASC accredited, equivalent to your high school. Doesn't have to be imported into the high school transcript. You don't have to worry about making the principal mad or the counselor mad. They don't even need to know. Like, you just do your thing. As long as it's not a prerequisite, you can take it alongside. This is great for courses like AP Psychology, AP Microeconomics, AP Macroeconomics, courses that really can flesh out the sense of a challenging curriculum. And, you know, ideally, there's something I call the 1, 2, 3, 4 rule. So what that means is 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, right? 9th grade, 1. That means at least 1 honors course in your student's strongest subject area. In a perfect world, more than that, right? 2 in 10th grade means either pre-IB, pre-AP, or honors courses, at least 2, and more, only if they can handle it. And guys, I wanna make sure I say this. I'm not saying like overburden your student. Like, I'm a mom too, like I get it. Not every kid should, you know, and I certainly don't want to see anybody putting, you know, 4 and 5 APs on a 10th grader. You know, there are shades of gray we need to think about, but course rigor is critical. I want you to know, when you see that College Board logo next to AP, so did you know that the SAT is owned by College Board? And the SAT is wobbling like a tree about to come uprooted. Now, and that's my opinion. We can talk about it. I've got a slide on that. AP is becoming more and more important to that nonprofit, because the AP course rigor is one of the most important ways that's left for the college admissions officers to assess your student. But what's ironic is that these last APs, for those of you who don't know it, what were they? They were online. They were much shorter than usual. They were not proctored in the traditional sense. Grade distribution was quite unusual. In fact, I didn't make a slide on it, but if you wanted to go online and look at grade distribution of the spring 2020 AP exams, you'll see that it was not typical. It's wonderful. We've got some kids on the call today with their parents. So shout out to Valley Prep students who had 4s and 5s. Love it. You guys worked hard. And, you know, there are, you know, stakes for that, right? Colleges love to see that. It makes them know that you're not at a risk for attrition. Remember the yield and attrition, the teeter-totter. We are trying to make them confident. The reason this matters is it makes them feel like, okay, you're not going to struggle and need to drop out because the student wasn't able to sort of handle, you know, the rigor on campus. So on this right side of the slide, take a look. The idea of holistic, you're going to hear me use that word today. So the idea of a whole, the entire holistic assessment means that all of the pieces are going to be important, with T testing being less important than ever before. Testing meaning SAT and ACT, because they haven't even been able to do them. It's a very interesting time in the test optional world, and we'll talk about that in a quick moment. So I'm going to grab a drink of water. I'm going to pause here and give you a second just to read through this slide. If you have questions on this slide, just jot them down. We'll talk about it. Really want to highlight that last bullet. Essays are so important. I can't even tell you how much I enjoy that part of it. Again, I know any of my clients that are on with us right now are sitting there going, yep, she really does. I'm that nerd. I started off as an English teacher many years ago. And that love of writing and of literature and helping students to find their voice and to frame it in a way that is strategic and allows them to get in, right? It's persuasion, it's marketing, but it's doing it in a way that has some vulnerability and has, you know, there's a lot of very important information about essays in the GATE solution that I'll tell you about in a minute. But anyway, the essay is really, really important, almost like a sort of a magic wand for the application. So you need to know that the admissions criteria are changing. This image is from a couple years ago. This is not this year, but I wanted you to take a look at what hasn't really changed that much up until COVID-19. So the grades in the rigorous, right? These are your IB, your AP, that first one. 79.2% of admissions officers said that that's important, right? So that is really going to give you some information, because look down to number 4, admission test scores. Well, I'm going to tell you in a minute that guess what? Most of the schools are now test optional, test flexible, because they have to be. We'll talk about the difference between test optional, test flexible, and test blind. Yes, those are 3 different things that are happening. If you take away the 55.7% that were saying, oh yeah, that's a very important thing to us, more weight has to go somewhere. So the strength of the curriculum, and then the essay, you see that immediately after that in position number 5. Boy, these things become important. And by the way, if your student doesn't know about demonstrated interest, you need to know about that. And I've got a training for you on that I'll be happy to share. I'll tell you about that near the end of the webinar. But you need to understand how to strategize demonstrated interest. Not all schools, but many schools. Boy, they are tracking your student with algorithms. They know if they clicked on the link in the email they sent them. They know whether or not they followed them on social. Okay, it's getting a little, I don't want to say big brother, but it's getting a little interesting out there. And this, at the end of the day, is the colleges trying to weigh and measure, do I believe that you're going to help me have high, what was the word? Do you guys remember the word? Yield, right? Demonstrated interest makes them feel more confident that you are going to be part of their yield. That you're showing that you want to go to prom with them, so they're going to invite you to go to prom, right? That's what that's about. So you can see here, and again, feel free to screenshot a very interesting sort of just data, right? And we're going to keep talking about data, because data is how you're going to have the information you need to make some decisions. Test optional is different than the other 2 terms you see here in orange. Test optional means you have the option. I have some students who are rising seniors who already took an SAT in fall prior to not being able to in the spring. In fact, most of my Valley Prep clients and most of my private counseling clients, I like them to get a first score. If they have completed Algebra 2 Trig, they should be taking their first test to get a baseline in the fall of the junior year, so that they have time to get the incremental gains that we're certainly known for. Waiting until the last minute is a very bad idea, but now it's optional, meaning, and a question that I get a lot is, well, my student did it, but they had an 1180, should we submit? 1180 on an SAT out of 1600. Well, what is the criteria? Think about it this way. If you know the 25th and 75th percentile for last year's admitted class, and that's data that I can provide for you in GATE, I'll show you where that is, you can make a decision of, do I think that they're going to fall between those, or be on the safe side and be, you know, like totally clear what they would consider to be a minimum score that they would want. In that case, maybe it can be helpful. It might even help you with the merit-based financial aid, which, as we've already stated, is separate from the admissions, right? Admissions and money are 2 different things. And so these tests aren't just about getting in, they can be connected. And not all schools are saying, okay, we're test optional, but then we're also going to be test blind. We're not even going to look at a score for merit aid, because they want some way to measure. Who do we give the money to? Because we have a finite endowment. Test flexible, by the way, means that you can use, in some cases, AP scores. In some cases, oh goodness, you know, there are different ones like well, the PSAT, most don't accept a PSAT in test flexible, but there are other state scores and other, depending on where you are geographically in the country, there are schools that have different policies. So I would say to check individual college or university websites to find out if they're test flexible, which tests does that university accept? And again, the reason to do that is potentially to get a little merit aid for your student, assuming they have a strong GPA, good course rigor, and some of the other things that we've talked about, like good essays. So much of this comes down to, you know, what are the grades? How do those applications look? Did they navigate the testing right? And how are the essays looking? So that is a real important sequence to be thinking about. Look at the growth of test optional, you guys. Look at this chart. That's so interesting, right? So why is that happening? Well, it's happening in large part because of the infographic that you see on the right. So much of this, and I want to credit my colleague Akil Bello at Fairtest. So fairtest.org, please jot down that wonderful URL, just the words Fairtest and .org. They're a nonprofit. My colleague Akil, who I really admire, helps to raise awareness about the many ways that the SAT and ACT have been demonstrated to sort of put the thumb on the scale for students who already have advantages, and actually to disadvantage students who can't afford test prep, who can't even afford to take a second exam. I think back to my own first generation status and the fact that we were kind of, you know, lower middle class, you know, like we did all right. You know, I had food, but nobody was like, hey, let me give you a couple $100 to go take a test that you don't even know about several times. Like, that wasn't happening in my world, because I was in rural, you know, I mean, I was being raised next door with a grandmother who had an 8th grade education, you know, and God bless her. But, you know, that college was just this weird uppity thing that other people did where I came from. So these students who cannot or aren't told how to access standardized exams are now at a better advantage. So in some ways, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Like, there's a leveling of the playing field happening. And in a weird way, the pandemic is playing a factor, or playing a role, because people have been banging the drum on getting rid of these tests for many, many years in this industry. Believe you me. Now, some of your students will still need to take them. I don't want to talk out both sides of my mouth. Valley Prep tutors these tests. What are you going to do? Capitalism, hoorah, right? But I'm telling you that I think that the trend is going to continue that you see here. I believe that test optional for 2020 into 2021, I think that trend will continue, and I think some schools may never go back. Something to think about. Did you know that your student's name gets sold 18 times while they're in high school? Did you know this? I just love, I wish I could see your faces right now. I just love seeing parents go, what? How did I sign off on that? Well, there is, not to go into the weeds too much, but FERPA is a federal data privacy policy. And when your student goes to school, the school administers a PSAT, yes? And the data that goes on that PSAT is then able to be sold as a marketing tool, not just to colleges, but to the military. 45 cents each time they buy that name. And that's why your mailbox gets filled with a bunch of stacks of stuff. This may be going away. For those of you who follow what's happening in Europe with the GDPR, the California Consumer Privacy Act, there are a lot of ways that data privacy is changing. So College Board's model of selling data of our students may have to change. So that SAT and AP, those twin products that they have, very interesting to think about what's going on. I bet the leadership, I bet they're having some very interesting meetings these days. You need to be aware, I made in large, look at the bottom here, without the names. So please understand why I'm saying this. Without the names of people having taken the most recent exam. So there's the PSAT data that gets sold, and then there's the SAT data that gets sold. And by the way, ACT data certainly too. So if they don't have those names, the colleges have to figure out how to find your student, how to woo your student. And, you know, I'm on a back channel with some of the social media so people who work in those offices. They have huge divisions at all the big universities, people who just work social media. They're like, what do we do? They're like running in circles. What do we do? So it's a very, very interesting time indeed. So there is an opportunity here for your student, as long as you think critically. So I want to give you a very quick primer. I'm going to ask you this question before I show you any answers. I'm going to give you 15 seconds. Let's play a game. Let's see what you know. Ready? How do colleges make money? It's more than one thing. See if you can grab your pen and jot down a couple of things. Let's see how many things you know. Sing some Jeopardy music. 15 seconds. Okay. So I think you guys probably are aware of the main one that we think of, which is that they certainly make money off tuition. But there are 4 primary revenue sources that they need to balance their budget. And those also include what you see on the board here, state funding. There has been a massive exodus of state funding of higher education, and it is a major, major problem. Endowments and donations are very important. When you hear about schools like Stanford and other major, Ivies and larger Big Ten PAC schools, whatever, like you just want to be aware that the bigger the endowment, the safer they are, but that doesn't mean it's the right fit for your student. We want to talk today about right fit. What is the right fit for your student? Now, keep in mind, all of the ancillary sources that you see there talk about a problem. Even if they go online tuition, what are they losing? Oh my gosh, they're losing a lot of money off of athletic programs, off of the dining hall, off of the housing. All of these things really will impact their bottom line. It's a major, major shift. So what are the realities? How much funding goes into each type of school? One real quick slide on this. Just love to give you data. This came from NCES, so the National Center for Educational Statistics.gov. And you can, again, screenshot this if you want. There are, projections, not by me, but by an NYU marketing professor that I'll share with you about in a second. That, very likely there are schools that are going to need to close, because look at the dependency on tuition versus other things and how that balances out. I think that it's safe to say that every school in the country is having to re-envision its budget. Look at the money on this page, guys. Yeah, endowments. People are like, well, what's so great about Harvard? I don't know. You want your kid to go to a school where there's $39 billion in endowments? That's 39 billion with a B, guys. And if you look down that list and see, oh yeah, my student wants to go. I mean, I feel like a slacker. I went to Columbia, right? Oh yeah, we've only got 10 billion over at Columbia. It's like, wow. Harvard has 4 times that pretty much, But endowments are where there can be emergency funds to help weather the storm. And you want to be thinking about that and how it could impact who's going to be on your list. I'm not saying, hey, everybody go apply to these schools. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm trying to give you data and pieces of the puzzle that should be in your mind as you're building your perfect list, which, by the way, is one of the things I most enjoy, along with essays, doing with my students, because there is a real art form to building the right list of the right fit school for that student based on many criteria, all of which I go through and gate with them to help them kind of figure it out, because you may not even know of some great schools that I might be able to introduce them to. So that's part of why it's helpful to have a consultant. So take a look at that. Princeton is actually given a tuition discount. I mean, I guess it's easy to do that when you've got $25 billion in your endowment. Like, that's so very generous, the 10% discount, right? And Stanford is shutting down 11 varsity sports teams, you guys. I mean, $26 billion in endowment. And look at all of the, the sailing, the squash, men's volleyball, wrestling. Gone, man. They had to look for where in the budget they were going to cut, because they didn't want to obviously cut on things that were more important to them. So really an interesting slide as we think about money. This is buyer beware. This is NYU professor of marketing Scott Galloway's chart. I accessed this through one of our trade journals, and I thought I need to share this with parents because we need to be aware. Now, he doesn't have a crystal ball, nor do I, but if you look in the bottom left quadrant there, those are schools whose current business model is most susceptible. And you don't want your student 2 years in and then having a problem. So there are some schools, I've sent kids to several of these schools. I love these schools. I feel so bad. Please understand, if somebody's looking at a recording of this and you're in the admissions office at any of these schools, I am not trying to tell anyone to not support your school. These are all valid, wonderful institutions, or they wouldn't be on the list. But my gosh, you got to be careful. And this is about our kids. And my loyalty is to you and your children. So I make no apology. We think that the top left quadrant is likely to struggle. We think the bottom right is going to get through it because they have a model that is more sustainable. And again, this is based on his research of where the funds are coming from and how sustainable that will be. And then top right, all right, go team. They've got their act together, the top right. We think that those will likely thrive. So there will be winners and losers in the time of COVID-19. And it is up to us to make sure that we position our students correctly. A couple of final words. We're getting ready to move to Q&A. I do think it's important to talk about financial aid. These are some of the updated ways that colleges are thinking about giving you free money for college, which I don't care how much money your family has. You probably would like to keep more of it than just give it away for no reason if you could. So notice this is sort of, shall we say, a menu of options, right? There are different ways that different schools are doing this. Some of this may be on their websites. Some of it may not, but you can talk to me if you have questions about how to appropriately inquire about what their criteria might be, because that's fair. That's a fair game. That's a question that you should be able to ask. So just, gosh, you remember 2019? Wasn't it great? I used to get in my car and drive places. It was so crazy. Wow, the good old days, 2019. Okay, this is what it used to happen. I'm going to show you a chart in a moment of how it's changed. So the whole obsession with SATs and ACTs was occupying 37% of parents' minds when they were thinking, what kind of support do I need to get my student? And that has had to evolve over time. Here is my estimate of what is going on today. That is a big change. Having a holistic way of framing your student is absolutely critical because the T has been taken off the table for those who didn't have pre-existing scores. And obviously the colleges are not going to just ding them for not having done it early enough in their junior year to avoid an unforeseeable pandemic. So really very important for you as mom and dad to notice what you have to do to make sure your student is ready. Testing timelines and strategy is still a thing somewhat. We can certainly talk about SAT being gone, but the reality is there may be online variations of the fall exams. PSATs are usually in October. I'm going to be curious to see what happens with that. Nobody's even bringing that up yet, but I'm just waiting on that one. I'm kind of one of these people who loves to have my ear to the ground on things. And then having your holistic criteria for where to apply and then where to attend. And how to use early decision, early action. If you don't know what those are, please look that up. That's something that I also work very closely with my clients on. Building the right list and where is my early decision school? If I have one, what are my early action schools, if that's an option? And how do I have a good balanced list between target, safety, and reach so that I can get into, in my career, I'm really pleased to be able to say my clients were averaging somewhere between 9 and 11 applications that are accepted for admittance to the schools that they're choosing. But I have to help them choose those schools. If somebody just comes in and says, here's my list, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, okay, like even with a 4.7 GPA and a 36 ACT, those are reach schools, because there are kids with those scores, believe it or not, that get turned down every year or waitlisted or whatever, because it's musical chairs. Anybody that wants to turn on the cameras, turn on the microphones. We've had a lot of questions that have been coming in, and I really want to allow you guys to ask those. Gets to talk. Candace's hand is up, so let's start.
I'm gonna talk. Okay, so I have a question about dual enrollment. So now you're seeing a great increase in community colleges and school districts partnering together. Would you advise enrolling online into these community colleges now, since there's a lot of the schools are doing virtual academies, but they could be doing this online work with community colleges, and they get college and high school credit as well?
Okay, it's a complicated question because there's an assumption in the question. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, community colleges most of the time did translate into being something that would help them not have to take that class at the four-year school. That is no longer the case. So does it hurt to do what you just said? No. Is it preferable to do online AP that is in a WASC accredited school that can impact the GPA? Because you've got the dual high school credit GPA that's being looked at. There's a tactical advantage to that. In a perfect world, I can tell you, I had a client, Kylie, who did triple transcript, and she did community college starting in 9th or 10th grade, along with online AP plus her, because she was just one of those kids, right? She went to UCLA, she was practically a junior by the time she went to UCLA, but that was several years ago. So yeah, I think that you want to be really, I think you have to be realistic about, is that going to actually save you any money on the college side? I think likely not. But I appreciate the question. Let's see, other questions, guys, come on in.
So I had a question about, two questions. My son is a rising senior and he missed the ACT is what he wanted to take. We wanted him to take. And the prep class got canceled. Do you know anything about that for seniors when those tests are going to be rescheduled? And then the second question is about community college as an alternative in this kind of pandemic time to allow your student to stay home, possibly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. Nice to meet you. I would say that there was a total debacle last weekend, students driving 2 to 4 hours all across this country to get to ACT locations where they had not been told that the test was canceled. It's a mess right now. I don't think that the ACT, and I'm just speaking off the cuff here, I don't want people get mad at me, but my experience is that they're not very organized right now. And, you know, students are upset and reaching out to their private counselors, you know, other consultants like me that are in you know, a group chat with me saying, oh my gosh, my client drove 3 hours from El Paso to wherever in Texas, and there was a sign on the door and they like posted the picture of the sign, sorry, no ACT today. Really? You couldn't let them know before they traveled? So preparing is a great idea. I think that using practice tests like the ones in GATE and strategies and things like that are great. I don't think that it's likely that we're gonna have in-person exams before the seniors need them, which is why, and I think the colleges know that, which is why, as we saw, so much test optional is now happening. I think we're unfortunately in a situation where that is just the reality, which is why, Michelle, you need to make sure that the holistic piece is as strong as it possibly can be. And I'm happy to talk with you about that if you'd like to offline. Community colleges, yes, I'm a big fan. My daughter, you saw the picture of my daughters at the beginning. My second daughter, Lily, just got her associate's degree in sociology. Hey, she did it at a community college. Her older sister went straight into a 4-year. That was the right path for her. I am agnostic about correct pathways. I do know that some students get overwhelmed by some options and some are under-motivated by other options. So only you know your student. If you'd like me to do an assessment, I'm happy to meet with them. But I think a lot of parents right now are thinking, hey, community college is more affordable. We'll just sort of hover in place. But I want to caution you something else that a lot of people don't know. So as I mentioned, the AP exams, when you used to take an AP class, it often meant that you didn't, if you got like an A in the class and a 4 or a 5 on the exam, many universities used to say, cool, you're starting at sophomore level English. You're starting at 201 instead of 101. Well, guess what? That went the way of whatever, because that's not what's happening anymore. So I do think that it's critical to understand that if you go into community college, many schools, the transfer program, like kids, I have a student right now who's finishing SMCC. She's at Santa Monica Community College. She has to finish 60 credits before she can apply into the transfer programs. It's not like they want to just like let you bring 12 credits over or even 20 credits over. So check, first of all, build the right student list. That's really important. And secondly, check what they require, because if you're coming in with transfer credits, they might say it's either 0 that we're going to take or we want all 60. We want the associates in place and then we'll take it. So that's not every school, but guys, that's a thing. So please be aware. I hope that helps, Michelle. Thank you so much for the questions. Angela, your face is in front of me. Hello.
Hi. I have a question.
question?
I do. I don't know why I'm in there, but can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Okay, I can't hear myself. So my question is, I have a daughter that wants to, one of her top colleges is UC San Diego, and she wants to go into marine biology or environmental science. And so I didn't see UC San Diego on your list when I saw where it was talking about universities that are at risk of closing, or were they on that list? Because I didn't see it.
No, the UCs, I listen, if I were a gambler, which I'm not, if I were a gambler, I would say the UCs will be like the redwoods in the forest and not likely to topple soon, except that the test optional change. I mean, they just had a change. Janet Napolitano just stepped down, right, as president of the entire UC system. So there's a change in leadership. There's a change in the criteria. Change. I do not think that they are at risk. I think UCSD has a terrific program for either of the options that you've mentioned. Congrats on having a daughter that's going into a STEM-based major. I think that's very cool. I mean, it's cool for anything, as long as it's the right fit for people, but I always love to hear that. I wouldn't worry about that, no. I think you're good to go on that. I think the private schools that are largely based on housing, tuition, like the ones who don't have those other endowments, state monies. See, the UC has state money. They don't have as much as they want, but they do have state money, just like the Cal States. Right?
Okay. Yeah, and the other question is, because of what's happening with COVID, they're saying if, the universities don't open up, they're going to lose some of their state funding. So how does that work?
Can you ask the question again? I want to make sure I'm understanding it.
Well, they're saying that if students are not attending the actual universities, they may lose some of their state funding because they're going to be all primarily online, for the next year possibly. And, if they lose their state funding and the UCs have to kind of share amongst this entire state of California, there's quite a bit of UCs within California. What are your insights on that, if you have?
Yeah, I think that the UCs are, and I would say even the Cal States, but to a slightly lesser degree, they are dependent on the size of the student body that is going to be coming in. And also they do report their yield numbers. So you remember our teeter-totter earlier. That's a really important idea to think about. It is similar to what's happening, by the way, in charter schools and public schools that are non-charter. The monies, when a charter school springs up and they take monies for the students that go there, those monies don't go to the public schools. And now you end up, you know, there's a finite amount of resources that's being divvied up, in other words. I think that, you know, if you're staying in state, I would ask you to really consider building out some other schools on that list that are not just UCs and Cals. I really recommend that kids take a look at some of the privates that seem to have a larger price tag, but actually by the time your student gets merit aid or positions themselves correctly, very often the sticker price is not what it looks like. So I would have a balanced list that it goes beyond just those applications. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Thank you. I see a question in the chat. Do you expect there to be fewer slots available for 2021 graduates with so many kids deciding to take a gap year? So that's a really interesting question. That's a question from a chess player, because this mom is already looking down the road and saying, okay, how is this going to impact, you know, this year's, you know, the rising class who are, you know, potentially going to have a lot of competition going on. I can't predict that, but I can tell you that it is musical chairs. There is a finite number of chairs. And this past year, I was really surprised. We had some students that got off of wait list for schools that were really a reach. But I think what happened is those schools said, wow, we don't have enough, and people are asking to defer and this and that. And these people, bird in the hand, worth two in the bush, right? So they got off the wait list and accepted into some more competitive options. So I see that Gigi has a question, and we'll do Gigi and then Dana and then Mary. Thank you guys for letting me know in chat about the hand raise. I apologize if I'm not catching everything. So Gigi, would you like to ask your question?
Sure. I'm not sure if you're obligated, once you take the test, the ACT or the SAT, are you obligated to hand in those scores once you completed the test?
Great question. It depends on the school, usually not obligated. Please look up online if you don't have time to consult with me on this. There's a longer answer, but there is something called score choice, and there is something called super score. So everybody wants to write that down on their notepad. Score choice is where you can choose whether to send it or not, but there are schools, especially some of the more elite schools, that require you to turn in every single score. Because they say, well, we don't want to make it unfair for students from lower socioeconomic status who can only take it once. So you don't get to take it 6 times, Mr. More wealthy student. You have to show us everything, and we're going to average those. So that's unusual, but it happens, especially in the top tier schools, okay? Just FYI, super score is where different sections of the same exam can be combined. So let's say in your case, and this is one of my current clients, so I can say is, I guess Olivia's probably right there. So if Olivia takes her ACT and she knocks it out of the park in math and science, but doesn't do it, like, yay. But then, you know, English and reading, it could have been a little stronger. And then the next time she preps just for that and gets, you know, and then they will, not all schools, but many will. So you're wanting to ask the question, put into the little search engine on any college websites, super score, question mark, score choice, question mark, and it'll pop up, okay?
Thanks.
You're very welcome, thanks. Dana, you had questions?
I did. I am trying to take out the video, but it is not working. You've blocked me. Okay, but I
did. No, let me see if I can. I don't know if I know how to do it. I'm gonna look. I would really love to see your face. I don't think I know you, which is why I should make an extra effort here. Dana. Wait. Oh, wait for it. This is about to get exciting. I think I just did it.
Hi.
Ta-da!
Hi. Hello. So yes, just a couple questions. You started to talk about the musical chairs aspect of getting 4.7 GPA and 36 on the ACT, but still with Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, and MIT, it's musical chairs. And then I think you were interrupted by a break in there, and then you didn't finish the sentence, and I wanted to hear what you were saying. Yeah, and so there's that. And then also the question about the extracurricular percentage was 5.6 on your slide, and I'm getting a lot of different feedback about the importance of extracurricular activities to differentiate for those students who are, you know, top test takers and top GPA takers. Like, then what pushes them over the edge in terms of consideration? And then the second one, or third one, is what would be the objector for the standardization if there's no longer SAT scores being considered? I know that I went to UCLA. I know the UC systems are doing away with them by 2023, but what will be the standardizer? What will be the objector in terms of test scores? Is it just going to be the AP exams? And then my final question is, if a school does not offer an AP class that a student would want to take, you mentioned AP Psych, and then if you take the class online, it's an AP class online, and then you take how does that, if it's not part of the curriculum that the school is offering, how is that factored into the GPA if it's not an accepted course? And if they get an A on this online course and they get a 5 on their AP exam, okay, so.
Okay, wow, okay, I'm gonna try to take it from the top. I wrote as fast as I could, and you can stop me. So first of all, sorry that it cut off. I didn't mean to leave you in suspense. 4.7 and a 36 ACT, those are kind of at the high end of what we see. I see students every year getting into Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Cornell with a 32 on the ACT, 33. You're talking on these scores, it's a difference sometimes of 1, maybe 2 questions. The colleges know that. The bell curve distribution is what they're looking at, because it's a comparative, right, across the norm. It's not just a number, right? So I think that's important to say. You know, you are absolutely correct that the differentiation is critical, and that one of the ways that you can do that does have to do with extracurricular. Now, those weren't my numbers. Those were numbers from the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, but that was several years ago. I want to say this about extracurriculars. They have to be carefully woven into the narrative thread of the essays. Just listing a bunch of things for their own sake that have nothing to do with the intended major or major and minor combination does nothing but muddy the water. The real secret sauce is to make sure that you are, again, weaving a narrative thread of why did the student do, like I'll give you a tangible example of a current client of mine. She is aiming for a degree in marketing. She's applying to selective schools. She is doing an apprenticeship this summer, which is not really an extracurricular activity, but I do recommend that my clients do apprenticeships or internships in the summer between junior and senior year, even if it's 2 or 3 weeks. Why? Because it's differentiation, and it's showing that they're going the extra mile, getting on a piece of letterhead stationery from someone in that field, evidence that they had their head in the game and that they cared about marketing, and they worked with this real estate agency that came in through a contact of the parent, and it's all beautiful, right? That is a differentiation. Just listing extracurriculars for their own sake is an old way of thinking about it. So I think that's important to say. You want to be careful that they're not redundant, because in the essays, if they talk about something in the essays, you don't want them also listing it elsewhere on the Common App or elsewhere on the UC app. So watch out for redundancy, that's a flag. And then you asked about AP. So the way that works is this. When a student does online AP, very often they're doing that in the summer. Now we know that AP exams happen the following spring. Typically, our clients at Valley Prep are doing online AP, either a semester or a full year course in the summer. So now it's too late in the year. So, I mean, obviously, guys, you know there's no sales pitch. I'm just telling you what happens, right? So when they finish that course, it comes back around. And then in the spring, usually they do about 2 weeks of brush up with the same tutor so that they go in and take the exam. The way the colleges see that, they're doing this through a WASC accredited school that is accredited in the same way your public or private high school is. This is this is weighted. So the course is weighted on the college side, whether it's on that transcript or this one, it factors in. So a 5 in the A on AP Psych or AP Macroeconomics, it's a beautiful thing to be able to add in, which is why I recommend it, even though it makes schools mad. Listen, I'm not loyal to the schools. I'm loyal to you and your kids. So, you know, I tell it like it is, because I'm like, come on, mamas, let's help our babies, you know, like everything else is fair game. That's the way I look at it. Did I hit everything?
You get an A.
Do I get an A?
Yes, you do.
I'm so very pleased because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist.
I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So I know Mary was going to ask a question as well. Mary, did you want to jump on?
The only question I really had was, you know, with COVID, it's really hard to do anything in terms of internships or, you know, doing any community service work. So what are, you know, this summer's almost gone already, but I mean, are there any recommendations you have for trying to get some of that under the belt?
Yeah, I have to tell you, honestly, it almost always happens directly through the parents' network. So the client I just mentioned, father is in the real estate industry, has a close friend who has a parallel business. It's not his business, it's hers. The student is doing, I think, 3 weeks online marketing support, like, you know, maybe a handful of hours a week, but at the end of those weeks, you know, the letterhead stationery thanking her for her contribution. So it's all online. I think in her case, it's, you know, supporting on social media, but also learning different aspects of the business that she can then write about in her essays. So it's not just checking the box of, I did an apprenticeship, I did an internship. It doesn't have to be paid. She's not being paid. The payment is the letter on letterhead saying, wow, you did a great job. We're so, you know, allow me to thank you so much, blah, 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 right? The person puts together a nice letter and that gets, you know, submitted where there's a section, common application or UC app. You know, is there anything else you'd like us to know? So glad you asked. Upload, right? That's it. And
Okay.
and that especially and only, and let me just be really clear, I'm not talking about, I did community service, you know, I mean, I'm not against it. I don't mean to sound snarky, but like your student needs to talk about volunteerism, not community service. It needs to sound like and hopefully be something that came from their heart because they cared about helping solve a problem. If it's an internship or an apprenticeship, please make sure it's connected to their potential major because otherwise it's kind of meaningless. What we're looking to do is show that their head is in the game beforehand. Not just, so I really think I'm gonna love political science. I've never done anything about it, but please let me in your school and take a risk on your yield and attrition, even though I can't show you any evidence that I've ever cared until now, right?
Well, mock trial, but.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. No, I really appreciate the question. It's not too late. I mean, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we have 2 or 3 weeks. But that really comes back to the mom and dad. That's shaking the trees and who you got in your Rolodex. You know, it's calling in a favor. And it can happen online for sure. So let's see. Some other questions are coming in over there. But does anybody want to jump in or follow up with questions up till now before I take others from the chat? Going once. Okay. If your student never got on the honors or AP train and is now a rising senior, what do you recommend? I will tell you, I have 2 students like this right now. One of them is taking my recommendation and doing senior year online and is going to be taking online senior courses in a WASC accredited school, working with a Valley Prep tutor so we can get secure A's in the AP courses. Listen, she's not going to her, you know, $40,000 a year private school anyway because of COVID. So, you know, pivoting toward online homeschool is one way that you can address that, because very often if they're not already on that train, so to speak, the school is going to be resistant. They're going to be like, well, oh, he's fine, she's fine, we'll just put him in regular English 12. Listen, that's doing a disservice. Like, we have to know when it's time to fight for our kids, right, guys? I mean, sometimes, I know when my kids were little, somebody pushed your kid down on the playground, how quickly would you have been in there? Hey, get away from my kid, right? It's kind of one of those moments. It's like when they're setting up your student and saying, here's your schedule for next year. Every single February, I meet with every family that is connected to me through Valley Prep. And I look at the schedule for next year and I say, here's what you're going to walk in and say. I give them, either written out, like, here's what you email to them, or here's what you say when you pick up the phone. But we have to advocate, because that's an unfortunate situation. For those of you who have younger students, it's not too late, but only if it's the right fit for them. If your student is going to get stressed out or struggle, please be compassionate to that. Not every student is built for AP, honors, and IB. Even among my own family and friends, I would say there's a bell curve distribution, right? Let's be compassionate, but also tactical. If a student thinks they're going to an elite school, we've got some, UCLA grad mom on the call and others with really great academic backgrounds. I know we've got a UVA mom on the call, and daughter wants to go to UVA. Well, legacy is a thing, but that student had better show up with the stuff too, right? Because legacy doesn't mean they don't care about yield and attrition. So I do want to thank everyone for hanging in there. This is life in the time of COVID-19, y'all. We get through it with a little help from our friends and each other. I thank you again, sincerely, for allowing me to be of service to you and your students. And on that note, I just, I wish everybody the absolute best. I will follow up and reach out to see if there's any other service I can offer you. And until next time, this is me. I'll see you guys next time. Wishing you all the best. Take care.
I'm going to the University of San Francisco with $50,000 scholarship.
Going into this admissions process, I was so stressed out. I didn't know if I could even make it to the finish line, but I got into 8 out of 13 schools with a 3.6 GPA, and I'm going to USC.
George Washington University gave me $20,000 a year. Indiana gave me $11,000 a year, and I will be attending Berkeley next year.
Gate had recommended that we apply to 10 to 12 colleges. So far we've heard from 7 of the colleges, and all 7 have accepted her.
They prepared her, they showed her how to be organized.
I got into 9 schools, and I'm going to be going to Cal Poly Pomona with a psychology major.
I not only upped my SAT score by 300 points, I also was able to increase my GPA by a lot. I was just worried about getting into schools and where I was going to go. And then luckily and happily, after all my hard work and studying and stuff like that, I got into 13 schools.
Thanks to all your help, she got into all 4 UCs that she applied to.
And UCLA, here I come.
I got a lot of support, and as a result, I got a 35 on the ACT, and I ended up with a 4.4 weighted GPA, a 3.9 unweighted, and I am going to Brown in the fall. I'm going to study environmental engineering.
I don't think he would have been able to do it on his own.
Because I got help, I got into the school of my dreams and pretty much every other school that I applied to.
So Connor's going to have that opportunity, and I'm going to be able to pay for it now because I got awesome financial aid and assistance.
Next year I'll be attending Occidental College with a $30,000 scholarship. I'll be playing swimming and water polo there. They got me a 6-point increase on my ACT, which was amazing. And I can't wait for all the things to come. When I saw the packet, I was ecstatic. Beyond ecstatic, actually. I got into USC.
My son has gotten into almost every single school that he has applied to.
My GPA went up, I got the grades I needed to get into these competitive schools, and now I have the choices available to me. I'm really excited about Berkeley School of Music.
I found the college application process to be daunting.
Not only did she get into the school of her choice, she got there, she was able to apply everything she learned and made it a great experience, a great first year.
I just got a 3.9 GPA because of you guys, and I can't wait to go to USC in the fall.
Thank God we ended up at the same school, and we're starting in the fall together.
The scariest part of getting into college for me was probably having to complete all of these essays. By using GATE, I was able to make myself stand out in the college application process. I think GATE was really helpful in that respect. Definitely.
I applied to 9 schools and I ended up getting into 7 of them.
In my hand, I'm holding over $150,000 of aid offered to us.